Hello there, this is Agri Talk right here on KTN Farmers TV. My name is Kelvin Nyakundi. We are back again, and today we'll be talking about meat hygiene and safety. And to discuss this with me is Dr. Joyce Thayer, who has worked in the Ministry of Agriculture for 35 years. She's now retired, and she was working under the Directorate of Veterinary Services, and she's here to just lead us through this discussion and give us some of the tips when it comes to handling meat. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's get right into it and look at the meat production. And first of all, even before we get to that, when you talk about meat handling, what comes to your mind when you talk about this?
No, meat handling is all those processes that are required to be done for you to get your meat, the meat that you eat on the table. And this is a long process, because when you think about meat, you think about the animal, because the meat will come from the animal.
Yes.
You think about the transformations from meat from the animal, and there are several steps to you to get that meat which is on your table on the butchery. So yes, that is the meat handling, all the processes, because there are several, and we will look at them, and in each of them there are aspects that will affect hygiene and safety. Yes, thank you.
All right, and in these processes, first of all, we can just even start with the first process that someone that wants to maybe slaughter an animal needs to look at.
Okay, yes, and maybe even as we go to that, I would want to maybe, what are these steps?
Yes.
We have talked about the steps. So we are talking about the production of the animal itself at the farm. If it is that chicken, if it is that goat, you're producing it at a farm. And in the farm, you have inputs that you are bringing in. If it's the feed, if it is drugs and other chemicals that are used on the farm, because this will have an impact on the meat. Then once you get your animal, it is ready, it's mature for slaughter, then you will transport it to the slaughterhouse. Maybe currently for chicken, we have a lot of home slaughter, because when you're Easter, and I know maybe yesterday we did slaughter a lot. So then once you slaughter the animal, there are processes there. Then you will transport, if it is from a slaughterhouse, you will transport this meat from the slaughterhouse to either the butchery, or if you're going to do further processing into other products, you will transport it. Then from there it will go further processing or retail selling at the butchery. Then from there, you and I will buy and go with it to our home and prepare it there. And each of these steps has an impact on the hygiene, and maybe we'll define what hygiene is, and on the safety of that product.
All right.
Yeah.
And now, even as you've rightly explained it, now let's look at, I believe all this is production, right?
Yes, it is.
All right, so what are some of the nitty-gritties when it comes to production that we really need to look at before this meat gets to someone's house?
Production, as we say, it starts with the inputs that are going into the animal. So you look at the feed that you're going to feed the animal. How safe is this feed? Because the safety of the feed, the quality of the feed, will impact on the quality and safety of the meat that you're going to eat. So you look at the feed and water that you're going to feed the animal, the environment that the animal is raised. Then you're going to look at what are the other farm practices that you're carrying out. How is the animal housed? How is the animal treated? Are you doing disease control? Is the environment such that the animal is not injured or hurt? So that is at the farm. Once now the animal is at the farm, you'll take it maybe to the market. When you're transporting it to the market, are you transporting it such that it will be wounded, it will be injured, or it may interact with other animals that will bring disease or other organisms that may cause an impact on food safety? What are the hygiene practices that are being carried out? Once the animal gets to the market, it will interact with other animals from all other areas. What would this mean? Are they, animals from different places may fight, may each one another, also may bring diseases from all these other areas. So you have to think about that. What are the practices that you are carrying out at the market? Then from the market, you go to the slaughterhouse. And this is the key place where meat is produced.
Yes.
The other one was the live animal. Now we are transforming the live animal into what you'd call meat. And there's a process of converting the animal. The animal has muscles. It doesn't have meat.
Yes.
When it is living, it has muscles. So there is that process of now converting that muscle into meat. So once you get to the slaughterhouse, how is the animal slaughtered? What is the design of the slaughterhouse? Where is the slaughterhouse placed?
Yes.
Because it could be placed such that it is polluting the meat, it is contaminating the meat because the area is polluted. The practices that people are carrying out, they are contaminating the meat. When the animal is slaughtered, there are government inspectors who will inspect to ensure that the animal is not sick and the animal does not have conditions that may cause that meat not to be safe. So all those practices. So the slaughter process is very important. The equipment that are used for slaughter has an impact. When you slaughter, how are you going to process the meat after that? You know, in Kenya, we normally eat hot meat. We won't eat dripping with blood. But the meat may stay for a day or two, and like now when we are having these very hot temperatures, how are you going to handle that meat that it doesn't spoil? Because we know that meat, particularly blood, is very good food for bacteria. So if it is not handled properly, the bacteria will grow because you are giving them their food. And this is going to impact on you. And tomorrow you'll be saying you have a running stomach or something, and you don't realize that it is because of the process of the production of meat. So do you have a cold chain where from the slaughterhouse, or do you transport the meat fast enough to your butchery or to your house such that you don't give the bacteria time to grow? So the meat is at the butchery. What are these practices at the butchery that may impact on the safety? And the practices we are talking about are what we call now the hygiene practices.
Yes, the hygiene.
Yes, which will impact on food safety. Food safety is just that assurance that if I consume that meat in the intended or the way it's supposed to be consumed, it does not cause harm. And the practices are the hygiene practices.
Yes.
And they will start from a good agricultural practices, good manufacturing practices, good hygiene practices, good cooking practices at home, because at home is where you may get very good meat from the butchery and you spoil it all in your house. And you cause problems and you say you bought bad meat. But really it's not that you bought bad meat, but the hygienic practices in your own kitchen. And after you cook, how do you deal with that? Are you eating it immediately, or are you storing to eat later? How are you keeping it to eat later? How are you processing it? Are you reheating? Are you cooking? Are you eating cold? So all these practices have an impact in the production of safe meat.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Now, you had mentioned about disease control. Many a times, people, I've always seen chicken where the chicken are kept. One is sick, and then the owners say, okay, in the next couple of days, the others are going to also be infected, or maybe they might. So let us just slaughter these ones and make sure we are done. We've discarded them. Or a cow is sick, then they say let us slaughter it, and then people eat. Is this really a good practice, slaughtering an animal that is sick? Because most of the time when I was growing up, they say this cow is sick. Let us just slaughter it, and then meat is distributed all over. And we usually have cases of even village during the holidays, especially December holiday, people are taken to the hospital because they ate certain kind of food, maybe that was maybe the animal was infected. So is this really a good practice to slaughter an animal that is maybe sick or might be prone to sickness?
It is a very dangerous practice.
Yes.
Reason is about maybe 70 to 80% of diseases affecting human have their origin in animals.
Yes.
So if an animal is sick, there is a high likelihood that that sickness can, through the food, get into a person. So when an animal is sick, the best thing is get an animal health service provider, let them look at it. There are some, if an animal fell and broke the leg and it is still alive, to alleviate the suffering, you may slaughter that animal. And then it is inspected by a qualified inspector to ensure that maybe it didn't fall because it was sick, it fell because it entered into a hole or something, then the meat is safe. So it is very, very risky. And that is why, like you have rightly said, many people, particularly during the festive seasons, they will, if you have people, 10 people got sick, 1 person died or that, because like we have said, 80% or so of animal diseases can affect human. So the best thing is don't eat an animal that is sick, don't eat an animal that is suspected to be sick. And the other danger is sometimes you may not even eat the animal. Some diseases like anthrax, it will affect you just by touching the animal. You touch the animal, the bacteria that causes the disease will get into you through your skin or through breathing in, and then you can get sick even without eating the animal. So the minute that you see an animal is sick, you call an animal health service provider, they look at it, and the law is very clear. There is a law that governs meat and meat products. It's called the Meat Control Act. The Meat Control Act says that you do not present for sale any meat that is not slaughtered in an approved slaughter facility. Maybe if you slaughtered for your home consumption, that's different. But as long as you are presenting to the public for sale, it is illegal to present an animal, one, that is not slaughtered in an approved, and I stress the word approved slaughter facility, and number two, that is not inspected by an approved inspector, and it is passed as fit for human consumption. So it is a very bad practice, it is very dangerous, and many people have not just lost their life, because sometimes we think of loss of life, but think about the cost of treatment. Think about the time lost when you are homesick because you got a diarrhea or something. You waste a lot of time, and time is money.
Yeah.
So it is a bad practice. It is also illegal. So you can also go to jail. And in those times, so yes.
All right, and now let's move on and look at the key players along the meat production chain, and what is their role in each of in meat hygiene when you look at the key players in production.
Okay, I would want to look at the key players at 2 levels. I'll look at the actual actors, who you would call they are the owners of the product, and you would call them maybe the food business operators.
Yes.
In this case, meat, and then there are the regulators, who are like supporting the industry. So we talked about from production. So of course at the production, you have the people who are providing the inputs, the feed, because if they are providing bad feed, it will impact the people who are producing and providing the medications and other farm chemicals like DEEP and such, the farmer themselves who are handling the animal. The farmers are actual food business operators.
Yes.
The input suppliers are like supporters of the industry. Then you have the people who will buy the animals, because they'll handle the animal between buying and taking to the slaughterhouse. You have the slaughterhouse owners, who may be service providers, providing the slaughter service, or owning the animal and slaughtering in their own slaughterhouse. And that is a key area. You have the people who are transporting the meat from the slaughterhouses to either the butcheries or further processing. You have the people who are doing the processing, if it's like sausage making and such, or the owners of the butchery. Then you have me and you as the consumers who are buying from either the processing plants or the retail shops to our home, and then we have the people who are cooking and eating at home. So all these are actors, and each one of them, when we talk about the farmer, or let's say the input provider, what is the quality of the inputs they are supplying? Is this feed safe? Is this drug good, registered by the government? The health providers who are supporting, are they treating the animals well? Are they using the drugs and chemicals the way they should be used? Because if they don't, there is also an impact on the food, because they will maybe treat the animal, and before the animal, the drug is out of the system, the animal is being slaughtered. Like you said, you see the animal is about to die, and yesterday it was pumped with a lot of antibiotics, and today it is slaughtered. So the antibiotics are still in the system, because any drug used particularly for food producing animals, there is what is called a withdrawal period. Once the animal is injected today, for example, or it's given that dewormer, and it's indicated in the package, you do not use this milk for 3 days, or you do not slaughter this animal for 28 days. Those are just some of the times. If the service provider is not advising the farmer right, so the farmer will not do that, and it will impact on the safety of the product. Number two, if maybe the service provider or the farmer himself is self-treating the animal and uses the low dosages of the dawa to save, so what will happen? The organisms inside the animal will get used to this medication.
Yes.
So they will become resistant. So tomorrow, this same bacteria will infect you, because we say there is that. So when you go to hospital, you are treated and you are not getting healed because you got a bacteria that became resistant because the farmer didn't do the right thing, or the animal health provider didn't do the right thing. So you find somebody is dying in Aga Khan who has never eaten meat, but the source of that bacteria was that farmer or that animal health service provider who didn't do the right thing. Now, when we get to the slaughterhouse, the owner of the slaughterhouse, how is the facility constructed? Is it constructed near a butter shoe? That's just an example. Or a polluting industry?
Yes.
Where the smoke or the effluent from the facility will have an impact. Or is it in a place where there are a lot of, near the sewage production, processing, where there are a lot of flies will come on the animal. So the siting of the slaughterhouse itself, is it constructed such that the meat that will be produced there will be clean and safe? Or is it such that there's a lot of cross-contamination? The people working there, how are their hygiene practices? Is somebody chewing gum and sneezing and blowing their nose inside and touching the meat, or going to the washroom and not washing their hands properly? Is the water being used there clean, such that when you clean the meat, it is clean? Are you using a knife that even if you clean it, because it has a lot of crevices and it is bound with a rubber band and you cannot clean it properly, so it contaminates the meat? Now, when you go after slaughter, are you keeping this meat for 3-4 days in a butchery where there are a lot of flies and contaminating the meat? Or are you putting it in a cold facility, a fridge or such, and then in your fridge? You know, it can also be very dangerous. You are opening and closing, you are defrosing and freezing again, and then you cause bacteria to grow. So each of these persons had, when you come to your own home, are you using the same cutting board that you cut the raw meat and then you cut the cooked meat on the same? Many
of us do.
Yes, the knife you are using. That. So
yes,
each and every person has a role to play. The government also. There are rules set in place. There are standards of the slaughterhouse, standards of transport, standards of the facility that you have constructed for keeping the animals, the feeds, how they are supposed to be handled. The government has put in place all these standards and all these laws. So now those regulators should also check to ensure that the food business operator, because the primary responsibility is with that butcher, is with that slaughterhouse owner. because they are the ones who are having the meat. The person in government does not own that cow. So, but they should make sure that the person having the meat or the person having the animal is doing the right thing. So each and every one of them have a role.
All right, and now let's move and look at the meat has been slaughtered, it's in the butchery, you've gone and you've bought the meat. So first of all, the inspectors who inspect this meat, because do we have like enough distributed inspectors all over the country to look at this particular type of meat and say, okay, there's a tick here, it's okay, it's good for consumption? Because there's a time there was also donkey meat being sold, dog meat also. So what usually happens? Do we have inspectors that we can say we trust when it comes to inspecting meat that is consumed?
Yes, we do. Every approved slaughterhouse should of essence have a meat inspector. And the meat inspector does not only inspect the animal once it is slaughtered. When the animal is presented for slaughter, there is what we'll call antemortem. Antemortem meaning before slaughter, before death. You check the animal, say this animal looks from the service, it does not have a disease that may constitute a food safety issue. It is not injured such that it may cause contamination of the meat. So yes, in every slaughterhouse, there should of essence be a meat inspector. Or sometimes if, because maybe in some counties they may not have enough, so maybe 2 facilities have 1 inspector. So, and then there is that agreement. I'll inspect from 6 to 7 in this facility. I'll inspect from, so, but every meat should not leave the slaughter facility without being inspected. And the law has put in place measures to ensure that you're able to see that. 1, meat should not leave the slaughter facility without, there's a document called certificate of transport of meat. So the inspector will inspect the meat and will sign and issue that certificate of transport indicating that person A is transporting meat from point A to point B, and this meat has been inspected and found fit. 2, once the meat is inspected, it is stamped. And anytime you go to a butchery, you'll see a roller mark on the meat. That tells you. And this roller mark, sometimes maybe because of the time taken, you may not be able to see, but this roller mark has an establishment number, has a number, which will tell me this animal was slaughtered in slaughterhouse A. Because I know, like say, A36 is that slaughterhouse in Naivasha, because it is issued to a meat inspector. So it will tell me this meat was slaughtered in this place by this meat inspector. So if there's a problem, I can trace back to the specific inspector who inspected the meat. So they are there. Then also we have the Ministry of Health Public Health Technicians who will check that the butcheries are clean, the people working in the butcheries are medically fit, they have taken their medical tests and they are fit, they do not have communicable diseases that can be communicated through the food. So that is what the regulators do. So we have the inspectors who are doing the actual meat inspection, who are most of them, they should have an animal health background that will be able to see what I'm seeing in the animal. I can relate with a certain disease, I can relate with a certain control measure of the disease at the farm. So I can trace back to, and by the way, sorry, something I missed. When the animal is coming from, wherever it is coming from the farm to the slaughterhouse, there is a document, a legal document called animal movement permit. This will say that 10 animals were transported by person A from Mandera to Dagoretti. So if that animal has a problem, I can be able to trace back to the veterinary officer in Mandera who signed the document. So there is a traceability system which will ensure. Of course, if somebody does not do their work well, that is another issue, disciplinary issue. Okay, you talked of the issue of dog meat and,
Yes.
and such. That is a criminal issue. That is not a food safety issue because, okay, the law, the Meat Control Act, declares animals to be food animals in Kenya. And if an animal is not declared by the cabinet secretary responsible for animals in Kenya, it's not a food animal. So the dog has not been declared as a food animal. The donkey is declared, but because of other social issues, that is why we are not slaughtering that. But the dog is not declared.
Okay.
So anybody slaughtering a dog or any other animal, the wildlife are not declared unless there is an agreement between the KWS.
Yes.
And there were times that they would do that for maybe cropping or such. But if it is not declared a food animal, it's not a food animal.
All right, thank you for that. And we are going for a short break. We'll be right back with more. Don't go too far.